Yes, sir.
Okay. Whoever persons are coming, we'll just add them later. Okay, today we'll start with the fourth module, that is IO interfacing. So, what is that IO devices? First, let us study the important concepts there. So, IO device. We introduce the notion of the IO controllers that connect an embedded computer system with devices that sense and affect the real world physical properties. So these are the important concepts what we are going to study in this particular module there, that is input and output devices. So by word itself we can understand what is the term input means. Whatever we are receiving, they are all inputs, and whatever we are giving it, they are all outputs, and there are different input and output devices which we have to study, and in detail we are going to study that one, and some of the intermediate devices, how the signals has been transferred with the different methods. We'll just check that. First thing what we have is the digital system interact with the real world with the help of transducers. Generally whatever we are speaking is in terms of a continuous signal, that's the analog. But when we need to transfer a data from one end to the another end, we try to convert them to a digital form, and that too especially with the help of a transducer. And one of the best example was the earlier telephone systems, which used to convert the voice to electrical signal, and from electric signal back to the voice. So as an input, transducer or a sensor sends some physical property and generates an electrical signal that corresponds to the property. If the property is continuous in nature, such as a temperature or a pressure, the transducer may produce an analog signal that bears a continuous relationship with the physical property. So here they have taken a few examples of a temperature or a pressure, but these are the few examples. But whatever I'm speaking right now, the voices, they are all also a continuous signal which can be sensed, and then if you're not able to hear, then we can convert it to a digital system. And one of the best example right now what we are doing is our how we are doing the online classes. Now I am taking class in my home and you people are listening there, and how the data is transferred through the help of an antennas and everything, and here I am speaking it through a speaker and you are able to hear there. So how it is performing, that it depends upon the what kind of input devices I have connected to the my computer there, and how it manipulates it, how it suppresses the noise, and then it transfers the signal to the space, and from that the your end you are receiving the signal and then decoding it, and whatever I am able to say you are able to hear that. So like this simple explanation about the input and output information transmission there. The same thing what they have given it here about the transducers and everything. So now to convert this from analog to digital, we have a analog to digital converter, and again from output side digital to analog converters we have, and we are going to study about these concepts in the later side. First, let us see some of the simple IO devices what we have, and the simple IO devices what we have is to understand about the keypads and keyboards. So now if you see, we are operating the mobiles or a system with the help of a keyboard. What is that keyboard? Whatever the message we want to type it or give the information, that is transferred with the help of a keyboard through a message. So many digital systems include mechanically operated switches of various forms as an input devices. So simple keypads are what? Push buttons. Push buttons are used in keypads, for example, in phones, security systems, consoles, automatic teller machines like ATM. Also, you can just check it out, and other applications. But there are so many different methods of keypads are there, which we are going to study in detail one by one. So we could treat each key in a keypad as a distinct push button switch and connect it to the digital system. First, what we have is, you can just check it out, the figure there. Simple example of a keypads, how we have, it's the help of a matrix form with the help of switches. In the figure 4.1, you can observe there. And in figure 4.2, you can observe that these push buttons are stored it in a output registers or a input registers, whatever we are typing it or whatever is getting displayed there. With the help of registers also, we can just see the keypads. So a more common technique is to arrange the key switches into a matrix, as shown in the figure, this one. Now, if you see it on our laptops, we have so many rows and so many different types of keys with the alphanumeric characters also there. So this is another keyboard what we are able to see it on a computer. In mobiles, we have different keypads. Again, it's a touch screen because of the advanced technology what we are going to see. So how it is operating, the concept behind it remains the same there, as we'll just check it out here. When all the key switches are open, all column lines are pushed high to the register, as you can see to the register connected to the power supply there. And then when a key switch is closed, one column line is connected to the one of the row line. So here we have buttons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and some special character dot, 0, and hash. So these particular push buttons have been arranged in the form of 3 rows and a that is a 4 rows and a 3 columns, and all these are connected to a switches with the help of a power supply and by register there. So simple keypad, and the other one what you can just see is the keypad is connected to the registers there. So how we perform the operation? Now we can scan the matrix by dividing one row, by driving one row line at a time, leaving the rest of the row line pulled high, and seeing if any one of the column lines becomes low. So here low means what? It gets connected to the power supply there. So whichever button you are pressing it, that particular button gets connected and a current pass through that and becomes low there. Whereas remaining button which is not pressed, it will be always at the high state. So like this, whichever the button is pressed on the keypad, that drives the current, indicating that that particular switch has been pressed. So that particular key is displayed on the output devices, depending upon how it is connected to the output display there. However, we are going to study the output devices in detail one by one. So another example what we have is, for example, if a key 8 is pressed, we can observe column C2 is pulled low, and when R3 is driven low, if more than one key is given row is pressed at the same time, all the corresponding column lines will be pulled low when the row lines is driven. Now, for example, some want to test if I press 2 buttons at a time or all 3 buttons. So whichever row is getting pressed or whichever column is got activated, that particular column and for that particular row gets activated. And if you press 2 buttons at a time, the simultaneously we will able to see the 2 buttons which we have pressed it on the keypad. So now again, it depends upon the priority wise which is being pressed, that may display it in the output devices there. So here scanning takes place row by and column wise. So thus we are able to determine the same information about which key are being pressed as would have used the individual connections for each key switch. So another method what they are shown is a simpler approach to provide a register into which the processor can write values to be driven on the row line, and another register for the processor to read the values on the column line. So now the another method is what, as we are saying, simultaneously we are pressing the button. So better what we can do is that we in order to store the information of the key, we are going to use a register as it is. You can see it here. Okay, now since each of the key switches is mechanical switch, then it is subject to a contact bonds. So now, since as we are saying it, it's a mechanical operating system. A frequent use of the keypad, sometimes a bouncing may take place or the keypad may not work at the time. How to handle it, or what is the time duration kept for reading the particular key pressed? It depends there. So depending upon the manufacturer design, some are using 10 seconds or some are using a nowadays it is 10 seconds is more 1 seconds, or in terms of microseconds, because we need to apply a technique for debouncing similar to those that we describe for a individual switches. So the embedded software running on the processor need to scan the matrix repeatedly. So what happens here is that the processor which is being dumped on the hardware, it keeps on scanning the keypads And as and when the key is pressed on the keypad, that particular scanned information is given to the processor. It decodes the information clicked by the push button, and the respective key is being displayed on the output device there. So as I said, for some in the olden days it was at 10 seconds. Nowadays it has been increased the time duration. What we can just check it out. So most keyboard includes separate embedded processor whose entire workload consists of detecting a key press and dealing with the rollover and communicating the information to the computer to which it is being connected. So in advanced technology, what they have done is that a separate processor has been kept for the reading and understanding about the key press there. So another one example of the input device what we have is knobs and a position encoder. So now if you observe this knobs and position encoder, the best example of this one is our volume control system, or in a fan we have a regulator system which increases the speed. As we rotate the knob of a regulator of a fan, we can see the variation of the speed of a fan there. So that indicates the movement of the device. So that is the another one input device which is being considered along with the keypads. So knobs and position encoder there. So rotating knobs have been used in the user interface of electronic equipments to allow the user to provide the information of a continuous nature. A common example is the volume control knob on audio equipment or the brightness control on the light dimmer. So nowadays we can just control that lights also there. So analog electronic circuits, the knob usually controls a variable resistor or a potentiometer. So what is that knob usually means? Knob is nothing but a potentiometer. Potentiometer means what? A variable resistor. You can vary the register and control the speed of the operation of the a regulator of a fan or a light or intensity, whatever we are going to use it as an application there. So with the introduction of a digital system, knobs were replaced by switches in many applications. For example, the volume control or a audio equipment was replaced with the two buttons, one to increase the volume and another to decrease the volume. The best example again for this one, what is our remote control television systems, where we are able to control the volume by increasing only the up and down or increment and a decrement of a switch there. So that form of control is not as an initiative or easy to use as a knob. So a digital form of knob is used in many applications in recent days there. A simpler form of input device uses an incremental encoder, as I said about a remote, what we are going to use it in our telephone, or sorry, in our television. So how it is been decoded and encoded, what you can just see the operations what we have. An incremental encoder operates by generating two square waves, as you can observe it here, signal that are 90-degree out of phase as shown in the figure 4.3. So left side A and B clock signals what we have. The signal can be generated either using electromechanical contacts or using an optical encoder disc with LEDs and photosensitive transistors as shown in middle and at the bottom. You can observe here the right side we have a black colored circle like structures with the coded colors along with some LED falling on that particular coded black color on the knob. So the LED, when it is this the light displays on that particular coloring coding, it decodes what kind of an operation has to be done. So this is one of the method what is being used. So that's a simple operation what they have given, how it has been kept as a 90-degree there. So as the shaft rotates clockwise, A output signal leads the B output signal by 90-degree, as you can just see that. So for clockwise rotation, A lags by 90-degree. So whichever method you go, that can be seen. If you are going for counter anti-clockwise, A leads. If you are going for anti-clock, that is a clockwise, so A lags there. So these are the things what it has been explained there. A simple approach to using a knob attached on to an incremental encoder involves detecting a rising edge on the one of the signals. So this particular rising edge of either A or B that detects the coding information of the changes of the signal in the input. So when we detect a rising edge on the A signal, we examine the state of a B signal there. So if B is low, the knob has been turned counterclockwise. So we decrement the stored value representing the knob position. So like this, the rotation of the knob gives the information of the clockwise rotation of the knob or anti-clockwise rotation, and speed is controlled there. On the other hand, if B is high, the knob has been turned clockwise, so we increment the stored value. So if it is B is high, it is nothing but we are moving the knob in the clockwise direction. So like this, we can control the increment and decrement, or increasing of the volume or a decreasing of the volume of the system there. So another input devices what we have is, we can just check it out, simple examples there: microphones, accelerometer, fluid flow sensors, gas detection sensors. Like this few examples is been kept in our syllabus, but there are so many varieties of inputs what in our day-to-day life what we are going to see. So how we detect that? So simple thing is that we need the sensors. So what is that sensor? Now whatever I'm speaking, you are able to hear it. So the sound which you are hearing through your ears, they are all acting like a sensors. Okay, so sensors for continuous physical quantities vary greatly, but they all rely on some physical effect that produces an electrical signal that depends on the physical quantity of interest. So what you can understand here, now whatever I'm speaking the words through my mouth, they're all continuous signal, and it is being transferred to a destination. Now how you are able to hear through your speaker is that your ears are receiving those words what are I'm speaking, and that is being decoded, and it is being processed in the brain, so where we act it as a processor, and whatever the word we analyzed or we have kept that information in our brain, we understand the receiver voice and understand the meaning of that particular sentences what the user input is speaking there. So in most sensors the signal level is small and need to be amplified before being converted to digital form. So some sensors and the effect they rely on include microphones, accelerometer, full that is fluid flow sensors, and gas detections. So in the examination they may ask you any one of the few or all four, they may ask for 8 or 10 marks. So depending upon that you can just write it. First let us see the simple concept of microphone. So what is a microphone? So these are among the most common sensors in our everyday lives, and that included in digital systems such as telephones, voice recorders, and cameras. And now what we are doing, the Zoom online classes through a video conferencing, you are able to hear the audio signal also there. So that is a thing which is being interacted with the electronics devices. One method is right now I'm using the say laptops or sometimes mobiles, what we can just say. So all these things has a microphones which is able to receive and transmit the signal. So what is a microphone? A microphone has a diaphragm that is displaced by a sound pressure waves. So in an electric microphone, for example, diaphragm forms one plate of the capacitor. So how it operates? So as the movement of the capacitor changes, the electrical property changes and the respective waves gets generated. So the other plate is fixed and has a permanent charge embedded on it during the manufacturing. The movement of plate together and apart in response to the sound pressure creates a detectable voltage across the plate that varies with the sound pressure. So what happens is that the voice which is being hit on the particular capacitor plates, the movement towards and away from it generates a detectable voltage across that and produces an analog input information which is again being amplified and transmitted to the destination. So this is one of the method how we are using the microphone to be transmitted from one end to the another end, which is generating a voltage signal by the variation of a capacitor plate there. Another one what we have is accelerometer for measuring the acceleration and deceleration. A common form of accelerometer used in automobile airbag controllers. For example, a microscopic cantilevered beam manufactured on a silicon chip. So this is one of the example what they are used. So the beam and the surface over which it is suspended forms the two plates of a capacitor. So as the chip accelerates, the beam bends closer to or farther from the surface. The corresponding change in capacitance is used to drive an analog signal. The best again you can see that is they have explained it with the help of a chip. They have explained with the help of a chip. But if you see the real life world or anything, you can observe that it is similar to architecturing part. How that particular plate has been put the pressure on the plate and the variation of the analog signal can be captured. So another one what we have is fluid flow sensor. There are numerous forms of sensors that rely on different effects to sense the flow. One form uses temperature dependent resistors. Two matched resistors are self-heated using an electric current. So here they are one example they have taken is that the temperature measurement of a liquid flow there. So one of the resistor is placed into a fluid stream which cools it by an amount dependent on the flow rate there. Since the resistor depends on the temperature, the difference in resistor between the two resistors depends on the flow rate. At what rate the flow of the liquid between the two plates that derives the information there. So the resistance difference is detected to drive an analog input signal. So other form of flow rate sensors use rotating vanes, pressure sensing in venture restrictions, and Doppler shift or ultrasonic echoes from impurities. So different forms of sensors are appropriate for different applications. Here they have taken one simple example of a liquid flow between a two parallel plate which sense the difference between the plate and gives the input signal in the form of analog signal there. Okay, and different signals what we have, even our BP measurements. If you observe blood pressure measurements, when the doctor encircles a band onto our wrist palm, that's a palm to one hand, we can sense how it is been measuring. Okay, so there are different methods of sensing the flow. So one of the best devices our BP instrument measuring there. Okay, next, the last one what we have is a gas detection center sensors. There are numerous forms that use a different effects and are appropriate for different applications. That is, a photoionizing detector use ultraviolet light to ionize a sample of atmosphere. The best example is again formation of a chip, as we already studied in how the IC is being manufactured. A photoresist material has been deposited on a silicon. How it is being done and how it is exposed to the ultraviolet light by masking and unmasking wherever we want to etch it. So all this photoresist is being done with the help of ionizing, how we are just sending the gas. So gas ions are attracted to the plates that are held to a potential difference. A circuit path is provided for charge to flow between the plates. So here they are connecting the again the capacitor to detect the different in the potential difference and transmit the analog signal there. The current in the part depends on the concentration of the gas in atmospheric samples. So the whatever the ionization is being done with the help of the gas, the current property depends there. The current is sensed and amplified to form the analog input signal. So these are some of the methods of using the analog input signal what they have just shown it. Okay, so these are some of the concepts which I just wanted to highlight it today. Okay, was everyone able to hear that?
Yes, sir.
Understood?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Even if you're not understood, if you can just have any doubts, go through once again, because suddenly you may not understand here. If you are having certain doubt, you can ask it either by WhatsApp or just call me at the time. Okay. Any others have a doubt? Okay, I will take the attendance first. Or anyone can take a screenshot in the mobile and send it to me. Okay, we'll stop the class today here.